Well, remember in the book of Acts, we have three sections. The first section is chapters 1 through 7, covers about 2 years of time and predominantly about Peter and his ministry. When we move into chapters 8 through 12, it's predominantly Philip, although we see an introduction to Paul or Saul, and that's a period of about 13 years, and that's where we are today. We're in chapter 13. We're looking at Paul, and we look at his commissioning. Interestingly enough, when you look at chapter 13, you see the laying on of hands to commission him into the ministry, which is a tradition that we do today when we ordain ministers and missionaries. We lay hands on them and pray over them and then send them out. And that's exactly what happened with Paul and Barnabas. And we see Paul's first missionary journey begin. And remember, most of his missionary journey was transportation with ships and going from place to place by ships. As Paul is preaching in the synagogue in Pisidian Antioch, he is preaching a historical lesson, starting all the way back to the people of Israel and how they had judges and then kings and how they rebelled against God, and then how Jesus came and he died on the cross and preached a strong message of history all the way back to the early days of Israel. And by the time he got ready to preach the second time, there was now great notoriety about him, and the synagogue was full, and he continues to preach with great reception by many people. However, I think it's wise for all of us to remember, whether we're preachers, whether we're just lay people, when we're doing something for God, don't be surprised when opposition rises. And in chapter 13, verse 50 through 52, we find exactly that happening in Paul's ministry. It says, "But some Jews incited and devout women of prominence and leading men in the city instigated a persecution against Paul and Barnabas and drove them out of their district." Now, I've heard about running preachers off, but that's probably a lot more dramatic than the way we talk about preachers being run off today. Nevertheless, Paul and Barnabas were driven out of the district, but I want you to hear how they responded. They responded this way. They shook the dust off their feet and the protest that was against them, and went on to Iconium, and the disciples were continually filled with joy and the Holy Spirit. So don't be surprised when you run into opposition when you're serving the Lord, and don't be surprised if people oppose you, but don't let it stop you from continuing the work of God. Don't let it discourage you from serving the Lord. Paul and Barnabas set a wonderful example as they moved on, when they were filled with joy and filled with the Holy Spirit and continued to preach. And so my suggestion to you is, in this world that we live in, if you run into opposition because you're a Christian and because you're witnessing and because you're taking a stand for Christ, you will find opposition. And it's pretty strong these days against Christians. But don't be discouraged and don't quit. Just keep on filled with the Spirit and filled with joy and serve him and be obedient to him. If one area doesn't accept you, dust your feet off and take off to another area. That's exactly what Paul and Barnabas did. That's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.